Wow, this camera can take a drop. This is a 2024 review of the OM System TG7 Tough waterproof, shockproof digital camera. OM System, after a name change from Olympus, released this camera in the fall of 2023, which replaced the Olympus Tough TG6, which was the best-selling waterproof camera in Olympus's lineup, and the best-selling Tough camera on the US market. So I had high hopes for the TG7. I had to get this camera and use it, as I've been using waterproof cameras for the last 15 years, from Olympus to Pentax to Fujifilm to Sea Life. And I wanted to know if the $549 new retail and around $450 US current street price was worth it. In this video, we'll go through what I call tough use, its waterproof and shockproof capability, as well as its standard performance to see what this camera is capable of, and if it can take continued use and abuse, and equally importantly, take great, crisp, clear pictures. So whether you're traveling to a tropical location and are looking for underwater use, climbing mountains and want a rugged camera that won't break, or need an indestructible camera for work that won't break, stay tuned to see if the TG7 is a good fit. The TG7 replaced the TG6, which was released 4 years ago. And cosmetically and physically, there's not a huge difference between the two models. As this is the 7th generation of this camera since the original TG1 was launched, this camera has now had 7 different iterations over the years, and small improvements were made in each version to get where we're at now with the TG7. It's available in this red color and also black. Check my links down below in the details of the video for the best price I could find on it currently. I purchased this camera at full price for an honest review, and any purchase you make through that link really helps me out continue to make review videos. The TG7 features a 12 megapixel sensor, which may seem small, but it's plenty big enough for about up to 16 by 20 inch prints. But as most share pictures via smartphones, computers, it's a bit of a moot point. This is a camera meant for outdoor use, so being able to use the camera with gloves or underwater renders a touchscreen very challenging. So OM System did not build in a touchscreen. You just utilize the buttons and knobs to make any adjustments. It's a very well-built waterproof design. I've been selling waterproof cameras for 15 years plus, and I've personally seen any manner of failure in waterproof cameras, from lens glass breaks to water leaks, and I can say the TG line is regularly one of the most reliable that I've seen. It's really important just to make sure that both the battery door and the AV port door on the camera are fully closed prior to submerging the camera. They make it really easy to make sure that it is closed, because if it's not, there'll be a little orange showing as a warning. This camera is rated to around 320 still shots per charge, but one helpful tip to wring out as much battery life as possible is to lower the screen brightness, which I've found to help out quite a bit. This camera uses the Olympus or OM design Li92 lithium-ion battery that charges via an included USB cable that can be hooked up to a USB charger or a computer to charge. The camera weighs around 9 ounces, and it's well light enough to be easily stowed in a bag or pocket for convenient shooting. I've taken this camera on a few hikes now, and it's really blown me away with its performance. The logging features are pretty neat. There's a toggle on the top of the camera that enables GPS functionality and tagging, and will give elevation, temperature, and location tagged to the photo itself. Let's take a look at some photos and video that I took with this camera. This is a pretty rare and unusual saguaro cactus with a deformation that causes the cactus to grow into itself, resulting in a bit of a grotesque shape. But it's really neat. The focus area is tack sharp and the colors are quite vibrant. This is my lovely niece, and the highlight of the sun on top of her hair really makes this image taken with the TG7 sing. I was also able to get the TG7 into the water on this trip, and while this is a freshwater creek, it's more like an occasionally flowing stream. So there's not much life in the creek apart from the rare chubfish and occasional freshwater jellyfish. None of those today, I'm afraid. I was able to get it around 2 to 3 feet underwater, and it worked great. This is not a super clear stream, so there is sediment, but its autofocus would have grabbed on if we had actually seen anything. I was also able to get some HD footage at this bridge, which I was quite pleased with. There's some distortion on the outer edges and a bit of judder when the optical zoom is engaged, but quite happy with it. One helpful tip with video shooting on the TG7 is try not to engage the optical zoom if you can help it. It will result in a much smoother picture. So what I like to do when I'm shooting with the TG7 video-wise is to actually hold it and move the camera itself toward the subject instead of engaging the optical zoom, which results in a little bit of that judder that I was talking about. This is a good time to talk about the TG7's waterproof capability and underwater photo modes. When you go underwater, that's when things change drastically from shooting on dry land. Light becomes very challenging, especially as you get deeper and deeper. The color fades and everything gets more and more muted the deeper you get. Therefore, it's really important to have a camera that mitigates these problems as much as possible. The TG7 has 5 different underwater modes. Underwater snapshot, which is great for shallower shooting situations. Number 2 is underwater wide, which is a wide-angle view meant for landscapes or showing structure, depth, vastness of the ocean or whatever you're filming underwater. Number 3 is underwater macro. This is a really neat mode. You're able to utilize zoom and take shots at close range. 4th is underwater microscope. Just like the regular microscope mode, which we'll get into in a little bit, this factors in settings to make underwater close-ups really cool. Underwater HDR is the last underwater mode, and that basically takes multiple images simultaneously and stitches them together to make the contrast really pop. Just like your iPhone. The TG7 is waterproof to 15 meters, or about 50 feet. OM Design also has an optional PT-059 case, which is pretty spendy at $349, but if you're into scuba, you can get as deep as 45 meters, which is about 150 feet. And by utilizing the onboard photo mode functionality, which we talked about before, underwater wide or underwater HDR, it remedies the narrow angle of view that you experience while underwater. It's also got an anti-fog lens glass, which really helps prevent any condensation buildup. There's also additional options if you wanted to fully kit out your TG7 with additional lenses and waterproof accessories. Most of the optional lenses actually fit into the front of the camera by removing the ring around the lens by pushing the button on the front of the camera. The TG7 is shockproof to about 2.1 meters, which is just over 6 feet. So this thing can take some unexpected falls, drops, if it slips out of your hand. Certainly not something you'd want to do intentionally, but it's great to have a camera that can take a drop and not break, unlike an iPhone. I dropped this twice from a little over 6 feet, and many times at around 3 to 4 feet, and it performed great after each test. The TG7 is also freeze-proof to -10 Celsius, or 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Given Arizona's relatively balmy weather, I wasn't able to test the freeze-proof aspect of the camera, but I wish I had it when my wife and I summited Mount Washington, which really would have given it a good test. Mount Washington has some of the worst weather in the world, with winds over 250 miles an hour recorded, as well as often blizzard-like conditions for months on end. Another mode not specifically related to underwater shooting that I really enjoy with the TG7 is Microscope mode. It utilizes the wide angle of view of the lens to let you shoot super close up. Here I'm going to shoot a battery that is only 8 inches away from the lens front, as well as a Starbucks cup. And the level of detail that you get from such a close distance, and the TG7's ability to actually be able to focus properly at this range is pretty impressive. It's a great option if you're using the TG7 for business purposes, cataloging inventory, taking snapshots in confined spaces. I really like this setting and use it quite a bit. I also love that they've incorporated it for underwater shooting. And then of course there's the auto mode of the camera, which most people will use in a lot of different situations, especially when you're not underwater. It will automatically optimize aperture and all settings to ensure that your shooting experience is as good as possible. Then should you want to go into more manual functions, there is manual and aperture priority settings that will let you tweak and adjust to your heart's content. Now that we've talked about the TG7, let's talk about some other underwater options for cameras. Ricoh, which is formerly Pentax, makes good waterproof models. The Ricoh WG6 is the most current version, which is around a $375 street price point. I don't care much for its simplistic, kind of clunky menu, but there's no denying this is a really good option as well. And they've been producing waterproof cameras for 15 years plus. It's got similar specs to the TG7, but I found the picture quality of the TG7 to be a bit better, particularly due to the smaller sensor and faster, wider angle lens. Another option is the Fujifilm XP120, XP130, or XP140, which I have here. This little guy also has Wi-Fi capability. It's waterproof to 20 meters. It's a little more economical, and it's out of production now, but you can find this used refurbished on the market in the $150 to $200 range. I like this camera a little more for kids and for snorkeling. It's not quite as rugged as the TG7, a little bit lighter. But getting back to the TG7, I think it's a great choice. There's a link down below if you're interested in it. I see this as a superb option for anyone traveling on the go, a second camera shooting option. If you're doing home inspections, rafting, swimming, snorkeling, fishing, the list goes on and on. I don't think you can go wrong with the TG7. And as always, happy shooting!